Today I'm going to tell you a story called Mr. Noisy by Roger Hargreaves. Mr. Noisy is a very, very noisy person indeed. For example, if he was reading this story to you, he would shout at the top of his voice, and you would hear it 100 miles away. One day, Mr. Noisy woke up and his alarm clock rang so loud. And this was the only alarm clock which rang like that. It ran like a fire engine. Mr. Noisy went out of his house to go shopping. Bang went the door when he shut it. The house wobbled. The hill wobbled. He went down the hill and went into the village and went into the bakery. "I'd like a loaf of bread," he said at the top of his voice to Miss Crumb, the baker. Mrs. Crumb trembled and gave him a loaf of bread. Clump, clump, clump went his boots as he walked to the butcher's. "I'd like a loaf of meat," he said to Mr. Sausage. Mr. Sausage trembled and gave him a loaf of meat. Clump, clump, clump went Mr. Noisy. Everyone was disturbed by Mr. Noisy being so loud, so they discussed what to do about it. Miss Crumb had an idea. The next day, Mr. Noisy went to the bakery. "I'd like a loaf of bread," he said at the top of his voice. Little Miss Crumb said, "I can't hear you. What did he say?" And Mr. Noisy said, "I'd like a loaf of bread." "What's that? I didn't hear it. Sorry?" "I'd like a loaf of bread." "Pardon?" "I'd like a loaf of bread, please, Mrs. Crumb." "That's better. Here we go," she said. Then he went to the butcher's. Clump, clump, clump went his boots. "I'd like a loaf of meat," he boomed. Mr. Sausages trembled, but, "What's that? Pardon?" he asked. "I'd like a loaf of meat." "Excuse me," he said. "I'd like a loaf of meat." "That's better. Here you go," said a loaf of meat, he said. Off he went with his shopping. Clump, 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 Mr. Noisy went. Then he thought. Then, did you know something? He learned how to tiptoe. He went home and opened the door and closed it as gently as ever. Then, two things he had learned, quiet and gently. Mr. Noisy thought it was fun. The people of Wobbletown was so happy that Mr. Noisy changed. Especially Mrs. Crumb and Mr. Sausage. And do you know one thing? Mr. Noisy learned how to whisper. The end. Thank you.